or to continue with our series on taking stock. And this morning we're looking at the area of finances. Now, I can already see half of you, I'm sure, reaching for that. Let's switch off this because he's going to talk about giving. I'm not. I can absolutely assure you this isn't going to be a talk about giving. It's going to be a talk about taking stock of our finances. My aim this morning, when we have finished our time together, is that you will be able to take stock of your finances, check their alignment to good, solid biblical advice. I want to caveat what I'm going to talk about, though, this morning to say that it primarily relates to normal times. You know, we are in abnormal times at the moment, and hopefully in the coming weeks and months we will return to some level of normality. So when we look at and take stock of our finances, we have to kind of maybe do it twice, how we're dealing with the situation now and how we're going to deal with things in the future. So all of these biblical principles can be applied to both times, but I am looking primarily to a time when we come back to a level of normality. So here is my first question to you. How are your finances making you feel? Are they making you feel good? Are they making you feel happy? Are they making you feel anxious? Are they making you feel worried? I want to share that I have felt all of those emotions about my finances at different points of my life, sometimes at different points of the same day. Money and finances play a big part in our lives. It affects our relationships, our mental health. Money affects our emotions. So to take stock of our finances, there are a few areas of our life that I think we need to look at. And the first and possibly the biggest area that I want us to look at today is the area of contentment. We're going to turn to Philippians 4, verses 11 to 13. They will come up on the screen as well. And this is the Apostle Paul writing to the church in the in Philippi, and he says the following. He's talking about a situation there, but the facts of this and the testimony of these verses stand today. I am not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. So Paul there addressing some situations that he's known what it is to live on either side, so to speak, of having enough and having plenty and then not having anything at all. But he says, I have learned the secret of being content. And that is what we're going to dig into just for a few moments this morning. Hebrews 13, verse 5, these links in nicely with this verse. It says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, he will never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So Paul says in his verses that I have learned the secret of being content. And I think that secret of being content is knowing that God will never leave you or forsake you. We can get anxious, we can get worried about not having enough money. But God has promised he will never leave you or forsake you. There were times in our life, myself and Ruth, as we were setting out in married life, where things weren't great financially. We struggled. Family had to help us, and we had some stressful times. And I think some of that, on my part, I'm not speaking for Ruth here, was because I didn't understand what contentment was. I couldn't be content with what I had. And do you know why? Because business, the world makes money from a lack of contentment. You know, we get bombarded with adverts that say you need the latest phone because it can do this, even though the phone you have is perfectly good. You can get a loan to improve your house. You know, wouldn't it look better with a new kitchen or an extension on the side? You can buy this new sofa on interest-free credit, even though you've got a perfectly good sofa. Business makes money out of us not being content. We are encouraged to strive for the next thing. We find ourselves comparing ourselves to our neighbours, to our friends, thinking about the holidays they go on, what they wear, the things that their outings that they can afford to do and we can't. And the world works on us feeling uncontented. I'm not even sure that's a word. But we just feel dissatisfied all of the time. You know, that is part of the business model of this world. You know, we have, you know, if you think that the phone manufacturer that's just sold you this latest state-of-the-art phone hasn't already started work on the next state-of-the-art phone, then you are sadly wrong. You know, it may be the greatest phone when it was made, but it was probably designed and finished about a year ago. And now, really, they're getting ready for the next one after this latest and greatest thing. We don't know what it is to be content. We struggle to be content, to be happy with what we've got. We always want more. And that was part of one of the questions that needed to be answered in my life as I started looking at becoming a follower of Jesus. One of the questions I had was, there must be more to life than this, because I felt like I was on this merry-go-round of not being content, not being happy with what I had. I saw this quote from a gentleman called Will Rogers. Too many people spend money they earn to buy things they don't want to impress people that they don't like. Let me repeat that. Too many people spend money they earn to buy things they don't want to impress people they don't like. We need to learn to be happy with some other things. When we are taking stock of our finances, when we are looking at where we are, can we be more content with what we have? Do we need a new car? Do we need a new phone? Now, there are going to be times when we need to purchase things. That's absolutely fine. I'm not saying that it's wrong. But what I am saying is, you need to ask yourself, what is driving that purchase? What is driving your expenditure? Luke 12, verse 15 says, Then he said to them, this is Jesus' words, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Our lives are made up of more than the things that we own. Our identity isn't in the house that we live in, the car that we drive, the clothes that we wear, the phones that we wave around. How happy are you with the things? You know, how it's not, you know, do you get upset when things break? Are you emotionally charged when you can't afford to buy new things? Now, I'm not saying, you know, when you can't afford to buy food, that's a different situation. But do you get frustrated? Do you get upset? Do you get cross? Do you get envious when you can't afford the latest phone, the latest bit of clothing? We need to be wise about things and be content with what we are doing. We can get encouraged to take out loans, to spend more money than we have. And the author of Proverbs, in Proverbs 22, verse 7, gives this stark warning. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. You see, If you buy something and you buy it on credit, you are making a promise to that lender, to that person, to that company, that you are going to pay them back. And God would want you to keep your promises. So you are becoming indebted to that lender. Now, there are things in life that we can't, not many of us, hardly if any of us, would be in a position to buy a house without having a mortgage. We wouldn't have the money to buy it outright. But we are making quite a lengthy commitment in most cases to Barclays, to Nationwide, to NatWest. Other banks are available. We're making a commitment to pay them back. We are committed. We are indebted to that person, that organisation. If our lack of contentment, if our lack of happiness, it makes us a slave to a lender, that can lead to us making bad decisions, to having sleepless nights. We need to be wise. Contentment is the key to helping to sort out, to taking stock of your finances. I have learned this the hard way. I'm an impulse purchaser. We're going to come on to that in a little while. So I have to be really careful. I remember buying a car once, and I went and bought it without Ruth knowing. But on the delivery note, I said, I got the salesman to say, subject to wife being happy. And I'm an impulse purchaser. But we need to learn to be content, to be happy with what we've got. The second area we need to look at when considering taking stock of our finances is planning. It is not wrong to have a financial plan. The Bible does not say it is wrong to think about how you are planning your finances. Going back to Proverbs 6, verses 6 to 8. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in the summer and gathers its food at harvest. The ant knows that it needs to put away some stuff for the future. It knows that the good times of summer and harvest aren't going to last through the winter. So we need to have a plan. We need to have a financial plan with what we're going to do. For us as humans, that involves planning a little bit for our retirement. Not being greedy about it. We'll look at that, why we shouldn't do that in a moment. But we need to have some plans. We cannot work into our 90s. And hopefully a lot of us are going to live for a good age. We need to be planning for our future. Part of what we need to build into our financial plan is our retirement. We need to have a plan for what to do when the washing machine breaks, what to do when the dishwasher breaks. You can learn to wash up in that case, but you know what I mean. I remember one day when our eldest Josh was at infant school, junior school, and been going to school. And in 1 week, I think the washing machine broke, something else broke, and Joshua came home with one shoe from school. So we had to buy new shoes. That's going to test, if you know how much kids' shoes cost, that is going to test your bank balance. Have you got a plan? Have you got some reserves to cover those unexpected costs? But we do need to do this prayerfully. We do need to do this with consideration. We're not going to look at it because it's quite a big chunk of the Bible, but if there's a story in Luke 12, verses 16 to 21, which talks about the rich fool. And he kept building bigger barns to store up all his wealth because he was having like a bumper harvest and saying, look how great this was. And he was storing all the food up. And he just kept storing and kept storing and kept storing. But he got chastised because he just kept storing all this stuff up. But his life could be taken from him that very night. None of us know when we're going to pass away. So we should not just store up money for the sake of being greedy. We should pray about it. We should decide on some amounts, but then we should continue to be generous. Generous to those in need, generous to our family, generous to our friends, wherever possible. God encourages us to be generous. So we need to have a plan. We need to think about things. But what are the practical steps that we can do when we are taking stock of our finances? Bearing in mind what I've spoken about this morning. And what I want to say is this doesn't constitute financial advice. This is just common sense in most cases. The first step is, do you know your current commitments? Do you know how much you have to spend each month? Do you know how much you have to pay for your mortgage, how much you have to pay for your rent, how much you have to pay for council tax, for gas, electric, car insurance, all of those things that you are obliged to pay for, how much you need to spend on food to feed your family? Do you know what your outgoings are each month? Not a rough, oh, I think it's this, but have you actually stopped and sat down and written them out so you know how much money you are spending every month before you go and book a holiday or have a Pizza Hut or whatever? Do you know what your baseline expenses are? And the flip side of that is, do you know exactly how much money you have coming in? Maybe you're self-employed and that's a little bit harder to do. You maybe then just have to average out what you've earned over a few months to get yourself a rough idea. But are you really clear on how much money you have coming in each month? Maybe you're there's two of you in the household. Maybe you need to combine and think about how much you earn together. And then when you've got those two figures, do they work? Have you got more money coming in than you have going out? Or have you got more money going out than you have got coming in? That's a real problem. But you need to know. You need to take stock of this because you need a light onto the situation. You know, many of us will have overdrafts. And they're a good thing for emergencies, I guess. But the problem with an overdraft is that you can go into it, and suddenly you get to a month where the money coming in doesn't even cover paying back the overdraft. We need to know those two figures. You need to know those two figures. How much you got coming in, how much you've got going out. The second step is that you need to build margin. I said last week we'd be using this word margin a lot in this series. But if your finances, if that's exactly what you've got coming in, matches exactly what you've got going out, then you don't have any margin for those rainy day problems. For if the car breaks down, if the tyre blows on the car and you need a new tyre, if the washing machine breaks, if the kids need new school shoes, you need to build margin. We need margin in every area of our life. We have to get away from the habit of living to the maximum of our budget, getting into the habit of having a little bit of savings. Hard one for me to get into as I grew up. I wasn't a great saver. But living to the maximum of your budget is a bad idea. Leave margin in your life. The third step is practice being content. Do not make rash purchase decisions. Ask yourself, do I really need this thing? I'm not talking about whether you want a Mars bar or a Twix. You know, you can treat yourself to a chocolate every now and then. But do you need this new phone, this new computer game, this new laptop, this new piece of clothing? If I spend it, can if I spend this money, can I afford to spend it? Is it going to have an impact on someone else in my life? If I buy this thing, if I take on this commitment, will I stop being generous? Will it mean I can't be generous when I want to be with other people? Try not to buy large items on impulse. I want to just pause for a moment. Something came back to me just as I was talking there about. I used to know a gentleman called Mark Prosser, and he was an entrepreneur, very clever man. And I remember sitting down with him one day when I was in business, and we were just talking over lunch. There was a group of us there, and he took out a pound coin, very similar to this pound coin in my hand here this morning. And he said to me, and the other people there gathered, he said, think of these as workers for you. A pound. Think of this, each pound you have, as something that works for you. But also think about how much did it cost? How long did you have to work to earn that pound? So if you, for example, are paid £10 an hour, probably then for every 6 minutes or something like that, or every 5 minutes, you're going to earn a pound. So you have to do 5 minutes of work to be able to buy that thing that costs a pound. Just think about how long you have to work to buy that top, that £90, £100 pair of jeans, shirt trainers. Gosh, jeans for £100. I've never bought jeans that cost £100. Never bought trainers that cost £100. But just think, just pause. Is that one day's work for a £100 pair of trainers? Is it half a day's work? But just know what you're having to trade to buy something. Just it spoke volumes to me. It's taken a while for that lesson to seep into my mind, but it's one to think about. And then the fourth step and the final practical thing to do is to talk. Talk about your situation. Talk to, if there are two of you in your relationship, if your finances are combined, talk to each other. Get help if you need it. We're going to put in the comments some links to some organisations that can help with finances. We're not allowed to give financial advice. You have to have you have to have a license to do that. But there are some great organisations out there. Citizens Advice Bureau, Christians Against Poverty. These are organisations that will help you for free sort out your finances. As you've taken stock, maybe things have not been as good as you hoped they would be, or maybe it's made you, or maybe it will make you confront a few issues. Don't panic. We can help you, support you, encourage you. Don't panic. There is always a way to sort out these things. You know, I remember the night where I had enough and wanted to sort out mine and Ruth's finances once and for all, because I had a sleepless night about money. Never had one since, never had one before that time. I remember I just could not sleep. The pressure was so much. But when I put my hand up, metaphorically so to speak, and took a long, hard look at our finances, spoke to Ruth about it, and we started to grapple with it and sort it out. You know, that light into that situation just brought clarity, peace, but not a peace in a blasé, oh, it's all going to be all right, but a peace that we understood where we were and what we were going to do to get things sorted out. If you are worried about your finances, if there is too much month left at the end of the money and not enough money to get you through, come and talk to us. Let's get you some help. This is the time to take stock. Most of us have time to do it. Look through your bank statements, prepare that income and the outgoings so that you know. I hope that's happening. I'm going to pray and then we're going to finish with a worship song. So Lord, I pray for all of us as we take stock of our finances. I pray that you will be with us, that you will set our minds at ease. in Jesus' name. Amen.